Hello and welcome back to Witches of the Moon. I'm Eva Maria, your Monday hostess for this season. Before I get into this week's topic, I do want to apologize for a mistake that I didn't realize that I made in my last video, where we were talking about the element of water. In the beginning of that video, I said, oh, we're talking about the last of the elements. Actually, no. I guess I got a little tricked or confused. I was thinking about the succession that we normally list the elements in. You know, we usually say earth, air, fire, and water. Well, because we were on the topic of water, I'm thinking of the end of the succession. So that's why I had said, oh, we're talking about the last of the elements, but that's not true, because next week we're going to be discussing earth. That aside, this week we're actually talking about magical waters, some types and their uses, you know, things they might be good for, things along those lines. So yes, this is season 6, week 8. And before I get into the specifics of the kinds of water I'm going to talk about, I do want to say that there are many kinds of waters that are used in magical practice. Some are more literal and some are figurative. What I mean by this is some waters are actually just waters, and then some are called waters, but really some of them are not truly waters. Some of them are alcohols or alcohol-based solutions, or maybe hydrosols, or some of them, for example, in the case of something like coconut water, it's technically like juice, but I'm going to focus in this video more on like literal waters, but that's not to say that it's wrong to view, let's say, Florida water as a magical water, because even though it's an alcohol or a cologne, it's considered by some to fall into the category of water. Essentially, it's a liquid, you know. But again, I also want to say that despite some waters in magical use being literal and some being more figurative, different waters, they will exhibit different properties of the element of water, despite if they're literal or figurative. But overall, all magical waters, they do share some common ground in the overall associations of the element of water. For example, if we're talking about figurative waters, if you look at, for example, war water and peace water, while both of these are emotionally oriented, which is like one of the greater associations of water as an element, war water is more geared toward like aggression and discord and things like that, where peace water is on the other end of the spectrum. It's more in line with harmony and happiness, so on and so forth. So that's just something I wanted to say, just to illustrate that whether it's a literal water or whether it is a liquid referred to as a water that is used for magical purposes, they all, in the greater view of things, they all do share the associations of falling under the element of water. But kind of like, for example, you can have the same language spoken in different places, where like dialects will kind of develop. In the same respect, those greater associations of water, when they are in each individual kind of, let's say, literal or figurative water, they will kind of take on sort of like their own different, slightly different sort of directions or bents, or they're kind of like little dialects in a way, if you think about it in you know, in relation to the metaphor of a language spoken in different places. I hope that makes sense. So with that, now I want to move into talking about some literal kinds of water. I have some notes here with me. I spent some time really trying to write down my thoughts, and I wanted to make sure that I included in my notes a lot of different kinds of literal water. So I'm just going to jump right in now. The first kind of literal water is storm water. Water gathered from rain falling during a storm. Usually storm water is collected during thunderstorms. I see this kind of water, I associate it with, for example, one's will. I associate this with power, strength, potentially aggression or force, which, by the way, can be positive or maybe more wrathful depending on the exact intention that is put into the work that this water is used with. Stormwater particularly gathered during thunderstorms. It also has some fiery associations to it. This water can be used to amp up the power of a working. This water can empower you, particularly if you add it to a bath. It can also energize or motivate you. This water can be sprinkled around an area to empower the space. This water can help to instill confidence in someone who needs to be more assertive. In helping someone that needs to be more assertive, a way that you can actually, a technique by which you can actually utilize this water is maybe to fix them a bath using storm water, or maybe that person could anoint him or herself with storm water. So that's the first kind of water, storm water. Next, I'd like to talk about rainwater. Rainwater has an association of luck, abundance, prosperity, but it also has an association with cleansing. Rainwater is also fertility associative. This water can be used in fertility works or fertility baths or sprinklings or anointings that have to do with drawing fertility, either whether that be for a stretch of land upon which you're going to grow crops, or maybe if it has to do with someone who is trying to get pregnant or start a family, or in any case where fertility is a factor, rainwater is very good to include in workings that concern those kind of issues. This water is also good to use in spell workings to uncross yourself while bringing luck and prosperity to you. If your money is crossed up, rainwater can help if you bathe with it. An example of a money uncrossing bath that I can think of off the top of my head is if you collect some rainwater and then boil up in it some cinnamon, allspice, and nutmeg. And then once the water has cooled to room temperature, once that infusion, I should say, has cooled to room temperature, I suggest adding a drop or a few drops of a cleansing oil to the brew. And then you can add it to your bath and bathe in it. You can also, if it's a particularly strong kind of crossing up or jinx kind of surrounding your money or career, your finances, maybe you could take the bath 3, 7, or 9 times. And you also, by the way, if you're going to use rainwater in this way to create a bath to uncross your financial or money or career situations, that aspect of your life, you probably would do well to do some protection work right afterward, to follow or to complement, either afterward or actually maybe even at the same time as you're doing this bath or succession of baths. Because it's one thing to cleanse and draw in luck, but you may want to put up some protective barriers to keep negative influences away during the process of clearing out any funk and pulling in good stuff, With rainwater, though, attention should be paid to the seasonal tides and times when the rain is collected, or at least I think, because I do believe that it is valid to consider that depending when the rain falls, there may be sort of an energetic shift, whether it's rain collected, let's say, under a full moon, or if it's rain, close to a pagan holiday, or if it's rain, let's say, in the winter versus in the fall versus in the summer. There may be different energetic properties also imbued into that rain. So do pay attention to when the rain falls. What are the tides and the times, the energies of those tides and times when you are collecting your rain, because that may factor in to what the rainwater can be good for. Now I'm going to talk about river water. River water, if you're familiar with, for example, Santeria, river water is Oshun associative. She is the Orisha that is connected very much with love and prosperity and beauty. So, and also I guess you could say luck as well. So river water is very associative of love, beauty, sexuality, sensuality, and or prosperity. Also, river water, it has a lot of qualities in common with Venus planetary associations. So you may want to look into those associations when considering working with river water. And ocean water, again, in terms of if you consider Santeria, ocean water is very Yamaya associative. Yamaya, she is the mother. She just has very like yin moon goddess sort of qualities about her. So this water, it's good for works concerning fertility, maternity, nurturing, healing, wisdom, domesticity, and or moon associative conditions. Due to the sacred association of the moon, and due to also the high salt content in ocean water, there are some people who may use ocean water as blessed or holy water, or as a water with which they may want to make their holy or blessed water. As for lake water has an association with Nimue, or the Lady of the Lake in Arthurian legend. This water, lake water, is good for workings concerning spiritual awakening, wisdom, blessings of strength and personal empowerment, as well as the protection of the divine yin. It's also very good for cleverness, success, wishes granted or manifested. The reason why this water is good for spiritual awakening or wisdom is that some say that the Lady of the Lake, supposedly that she learned all the secrets of the magic of Merlin. She became very wise, very spiritually awake, and magically adept. And the cleverness comes from the part of the lore that says, supposedly, that, and there is some debate as to figures in terms of the Lady of the Lake and the story of Merlin and all that. There is a little bit of a debate, but from what I gather and from what feels legit to me from my understandings, supposedly once the lady gained her knowledge and understanding from Merlin, she tricked him and she trapped him. And yet, the aspect of blessings of strength and personal empowerment, or the protection of the divine yin, the Lady of the Lake, she gave Arthur Excalibur. You know, she gave up a method of protection and strength and personal empowerment to him. So that's where the association of lake water imbuing these qualities comes from. Also, the concept of wishing wells, okay? They harken back to a time when Celts would offer things to water deities in exchange for blessings. Throwing coins into lakes or wishing wells or fountains is essentially an act of making an offering to Nimue or perhaps other water deities in exchange for help, blessings, or wishes granted. Fountain water shares the association of lake water, by the way. So, again, it's good for workings concerning spiritual awakening, wisdom, blessings of strength, and personal empowerment, as well as the protection of the divine yin. Also, cleverness, success, wishes granted or manifested. As for spring water is well suited to workings of a cleansing nature. This is because spring water has a strong purity association. For this reason, spring water is excellent with which to make your own blessed or holy water. Some people merely pray over water to bless it, while others may add salt and or purifying herbal infusions or herbs into it, and then pray over it in order to create blessed or holy water. Spring water also has grounding quality to it, because springs often flow beneath and up from the earth. So they have this energetic connection to and close proximity to the earth element. So spring water, again, great for cleansing, great for purifying, but also good for centering and grounding. Now, pond water. Some say that pond water and lake water share the same properties and magical associations. I, however, consider pond water to be excellent for the strengthening of emotional bonds, the fortification and promotion of peace in relationships, as well as of social atmospheres of all kinds. This is because ponds are smaller bodies of water in most cases, and usually they are teeming with life. In ponds, living things exist in close proximity to one another in a balanced and harmonious ecosystem. Therefore, pond water would well suit magical workings concerning things like love, friendship, professional relationships, community relations, family relations, domesticity, reconciliation between those who have broken up or been at odds with one another. This water can promote harmony and unity in places where it is sprinkled around. Good examples might include drama-ridden workplaces or homes that have been, let's say, the setting of many family fights. If there's a lot of tension in a domestic setting, sprinkling around pond water may actually help. Now, quarry water. Sometimes quarries, rock quarries, they're filled in with water either intentionally or unintentionally. There is, for example, a man-made lake in my town that was once a quarry that eventually became filled with water. And this kind of water, this quarry water, it would be excellent, very well suited for magical workings of a grounding, stabilizing, and centering nature. This is because of the abundance of earth in quarry water. This water would probably also well suit those that have issues, let's say, with anxiety. Maybe they could take baths with a little bit of quarry water added in because of the sort of grounding energy. It could help to dispel anxious feelings. So yes, you can add this water to baths, floor washes, or liquid sprinkling recipes to promote earth-associative qualities and also peace. Now I want to talk about bay water or gulf water. Bays are bodies of water where on roughly 3 sides of them, there's land, and then they kind of open out into the ocean. That's what bays are, but gulfs are larger bays. So all gulfs are bays, but bays are too small to be called gulfs. But it's basically like you got land in the shape of like a C, and then the water opens out into the ocean. So the association that I get with that land formation kind of being like that, in that C formation, I get the sense of support. So therefore I would associate water from bays or gulfs with supportive energies. This kind of water can fortify bonds between yourself and others who are supportive of and caring toward you. Bay or gulf water could be good for work centering on finding supportive people to surround yourself with when you need to build up a personal support system. This water can also help you to rally support from strangers. This can be useful in raising funds for charity, for example. Bay or gulf water can also be used to get, or to help to get, deadbeat parents to pay the child support that they owe. Excuse me. In order to do this, you could, for example, take a bowl, put their picture in the bottom, maybe facing up, weigh it down with a piece of programmed clear quartz or rose quartz that you've charged or programmed for the intention of them paying or being compelled to pay the child support that they owe. And then you would proceed to submerge the photo being weighed down by the crystal with water from a gulf or a bay. You could also potentially, if you can't do that, you could potentially sprinkle some bay or gulf water maybe on their front doorstep, as long as you're not on like crazy terms where you can't be anywhere on their property, because then that could just get you in trouble. But I'm thinking if you sprinkle it on their doorstep and they walk over it constantly, the energy from that bay or gulf water that they will be constantly tracking back and forth, moving through, it will affect them on an energetic level, perhaps emotionally. Maybe they'll start feeling emotionally drawn to like, hey, that's my kid, maybe I should make good on what I owe. It will motivate them potentially toward paying. I would think it would make a lot of sense to me anyway, but I think the submerging of the photo especially might be effective. So this water is good for calling on your spiritual allies as well. For example, in times when you need help and support through difficulties, you could put a glass of bay or gulf water on, let's say, your ancestor altar, or if you don't really have an ancestor altar, but you work with your spiritual allies from your working altar, you could just put a glass of bay or gulf water on your working altar. Water from waterfalls is another kind of water that I'd like to speak about. Let me just check something. Yes. Okay, this water from waterfalls, is very active. There is clear movement and definitive progress in the flow of waterfalls. Therefore, this water is very well suited to blockbusting or motivational works. Whenever you are metaphorically stuck or stagnant in some area of your life, try adding some waterfall water into a bath that includes some herbal infusions for clearing and opening. Examples of herbs with which you can infuse into a bath like that. Some examples might be lemongrass, citrus fruits, pine, maybe even abre camino. I do want to mention, though, that water from streams shares the same associations as water from waterfalls, but there is a less intense kind of vibe to water from streams as opposed to water from waterfalls. Water from waterfalls, it has a lot more of an intense motion to it, where streams, they progress, but on a more subtle, sort of more relaxed pace, So water from streams might be better suited for less dire situations, like for situations where you aren't stuck per se, but where you're getting a little impatient with a situation and you want to help it flow better or progress more smoothly. And finally, I'd like to talk about water gathered from straits. Straits are smaller or narrower waterways that connect to larger bodies of water. This kind of water holds the symbolism of connections and relations, and therefore I would intuit that water from straits can help in magical working centering around forging connections, building relationships of all kinds, networking, or even helping along the emotional process that can be part of adapting to change or transitional periods in one's life. Again, you can use any of these waters in baths, sprinkles, depending what kind of water. Some of these you might be able to drink. I do not suggest drinking ocean water. I do not suggest drinking pond water. I don't suggest drinking quarry water because depending what they were digging up, in the quarry. But, some things, river water too, you got to be careful with. Sometimes there are different organisms and things that can live in certain kinds of bodies of water. Even lake water I'd be careful with. But, in terms of things like maybe spring water or I guess well water would be okay as long as it's, a well that is for drinking and it's not tainted. Use caution in drinking of any kind of literal waters. Do consider that, again, some natural waters, again, such as maybe lakes, ponds, rivers occasionally, there can be certain organisms or parasites living in the water. You have to be careful. So do be as informed as possible. Even rainwater sometimes can contain pollution, so please be careful about drinking some of these waters. But, you can bathe with some of these waters. You can, any number of these waters. You can use them in baths, in sprinkling, in washing things. As I said, with the example of the bay or gulf water and submerging the photo, you can do submergings of things for various reasons. You can anoint yourself with them. But yeah, these are some examples of literal waters. I'm sure these are not the only literal actual waters that I could probably have mentioned, but these are those that came to mind readily. I'm not really going to go into figurative waters. There are, again, so many of those. I chose to try and focus on a certain sort of waters, that being the literal waters, and I tried to just focus on the ones that I could think of. I hope that what I've shared with you here, that this has been helpful information, inspirational information. If you have anything you'd like to share or add, maybe something I haven't mentioned, feel free to comment that below so that everybody can be enlightened. That would be very cool. Or that we could talk about it, discuss it. Or if you have any questions regarding maybe how to use some of these waters, or anything that I may have said in regard to these waters, feel free to ask. Ask that in the comments below too. I'm going to try my best to address any questions put forward. And one thing I forgot to say as well is be careful collecting these waters too. Some of these kinds of waters, such as water from waterfalls, it may not necessarily be an easy task to collect all of these kinds of waters, so do be very careful, Be safe in collecting water from certain areas. And I guess with that, I'm going to wish you blessed be and ashe. Stay tuned. Let's check out what everyone else has to bring forward on this subject this week. And until next time, until our next exchange, you stay awesome, and bye-bye for now.